Hello. Today I'm going to discuss conditional registration form fields, or in other words, fields with conditional logic. So what is conditional logic? Conditional logic allows you to create smart forms. This means you can set up rules that dynamically require, display, or hide form fields based upon a registrant's input. This feature is critical for streamlining any detailed registration sequence to ensure that registrants provide all required information while only seeing the fields they need to. Let's start with a simple example. On this registration form, there's a select list field that says, "Will you bring a guest?" If I select no, the field is validated and I can proceed. No other input is required. However, if I were to select yes, 3 additional fields appear. These fields are set to become visible if the user answers that yes, they are bringing a guest. This is a valuable feature as it allows me to streamline my registration process and ensures that registrants provide the required information but only see the fields they need to. It's best practice to keep forms as short and focused as possible. This improves the user experience, fewer fields to fill out and less time required to complete the form, and thus conversion, or the percentage of successful form submissions. So let's take a look at how you can set up attendees' registration forms to use conditional logic. First, let's open the registration form screen. I'd recommend starting by adding your source field, from which the user's input will determine the behavior of the connected fields. In my example, I have added the question, "Will you bring a guest?" with the options yes and no. So let's drag and drop a select list field onto the form preview. I'll proceed by adding the label, unselected value, and options. Next, let's add the dependent fields. If the registrant is bringing a guest, I want them to provide their first and last name and their email. So I'll use 3 text input fields to accomplish this. Now I'll save the form so I can begin to add the conditional logic. Remember, both the field and the form must be saved before the conditional logic can be applied. Now I'm going to add the logic. For each of the dependent questions, I'm going to take the following steps. First, I'm going to set each field to be required if any of the following conditions are met. In this example, if a registrant is bringing a guest, I want to require them to provide the guest's name and email address. I would use all if there were multiple fields where a certain input was required for this logic to work. But in this case, there's only a single source field, so any is suitable. Next, I need to choose the source field. In this example, it will be, "Will you bring a guest?" Then I'll set the condition to be is and the answer I'm expecting to be yes. So if we follow the logic, the field "Will you bring a guest?" is required if the user's response to that question is yes. Next, to ensure only those registrants who will be bringing a guest see the dependent fields, I'm going to set the field's visibility. Under Hide Show, I'll set this field to be visible if any of the following conditions are met. Like the last requirement, I'll choose the source field. Again, it's "Will you bring a guest?" and set yes as the condition to be met. Next, I'll save my changes. I'll repeat these last steps for each of the dependent fields. The final important step is to save the form. Now I can preview my changes. From the Event Website drop-down, select Preview and wait for the preview to load. If your site is already published, however, simply open the event site in your browser and refresh the registration page. The changes will automatically sync and don't require a republish. That's conditional form fields.